is Pan-Africanism. Since my objective is Pan-Africanism, I'm a Pan-Africanist. Africa is my base. Africa is my priority. The Black Panther Party was a Marxist-Leninist party. Its priority was the conversion of America through revolutionary means into a socialist society. You understand? Now, I want socialism in America. Yeah, excuse me, if we had it, then we'd be able to see a whole lot of things that we need to see about on the question of racism. And I know theoretically that socialism in America will help black people. So I'm for socialism in America. I'm pushing it. But it's not my priority. It's not my priority. It's the priority of the Panther Party. It's not my priority. My priority is Africa. Because while socialism is good, my black brothers are a lot better. And I know my black brothers will fight for me quicker than international socialism.
Yeah. One question on
Some do and some don't. Some do and some don't. But look here, brother. Just because they live on the continent don't mean that they're authorities on Africa. Marcus Garvey ain't never stepped foot on Africa. He never stepped foot on Africa. And what he did for Africa, a whole lot of brothers living on the continent never did. So just because a brother from the continent and even engaged in armed struggle don't mean he knows everything. Let's look at it objectively. Brother, what you talking about? How you want to get there? Is it the best way? Listen to my way. That's all. Okay? Hey, look, that's a very difficult problem, you understand? And again, you got to watch the control of the media. Now, Mr. Obote is the legitimate president of Uganda, correct? He is. A man comes along by the name of Amin and knocks this man over by guns. By guns, through a military coup d'etat. Thus, he has illegally usurped power. All right? He has illegally usurped power. What we have to do is to see whether or not his illegal usurpation of power is really sanctioned by the masses or not. You understand? Because that's how you justify regimes. That's the only way you justify them. Because if it is not sanctioned by the masses, then people know that it ain't going right. And so what the white boy does is he does everything to make you believe it is sanctioned by the masses. He even makes the masses believe that they sanctioned it. You understand? And if he can't do that, at least he's going to silence the masses and say it's a sanction. So when this occurs, this is always the first problem we have. Do the masses sanction this? That's the only question. Now, when that question is beginning to boil, the white boy is going to bring out other things and try to focus your attention on those things. You understand? Amin illegally usurped power from Milton Obote. When he did that, it looked as if he did it in complicity with Israeli agents. I think Obote even charged that he did. So Amin got rid of the Israelis. Super revolutionary act. Very super, because the masses of African people the world over are opposed to the illegal occupation of Israel. We are just people. We know the land belongs to the Palestinians. We have no alternative but to support that just struggle. Aside from that, they're fighting with Egypt. Egypt is our motherland. Egypt is Africa. You can't play with that. You can't come and give me some dollars to support you here and try to chunk away at my homeland. You must be, I ain't no chump. I got to be against you because you're a threat to me. So he kicks them out, man, and wow, everybody said, hey, man, this dude is revolutionary. He got rid of the Zionists. He's together. Right on. And he had problems with the British, and he told them off. But there are contradictions building up in the society. You got to solve them. Because once you usurp power, you tell the people I can do it better than the one who did it before. And you better deliver quick, fast, and hurry. Quick, fast, in a hurry. Here comes the Asian problem. Right on. The Asians occupy commercial interests all over our communities, all over. Not only in West Africa, in the West Indies. Yes, they do. They occupy a class of entrepreneurs, small businessmen, petty commerce. We have to buy from them. We are the Africans. We have to buy from them. But the Asians were brought into Africa by Europeans, white imperialism. It is they who brought the Asians into Africa while they were taking us out of Africa. And they brought them here to create this race class. They did. They did. Because they knew when the conflict was coming, we would rush to them and fight them before we got to them. So any intelligent person would first try to make allies with these people, since they're in fact your potential allies, and go after European imperialism. White boy, he think he's smart. We got him covered. So when the fight comes to bring back Mr. Obote, everybody be talking about the Asians. Everybody talking about the Asians. They just can't. There are ways to do that. There are ways. There are ways. When I was in Algeria, I met many of the people who were leaders of the FLN, who fought in the revolution. And I was very surprised to know that most of them had fought for the French in Vietnam and had been captured by the Vietnamese. They were captured by the Vietnamese, and the Vietnamese educated them and sent them back to Algeria. And I have never forgotten that. I have never forgotten that. And I've always thought that is a superb example of true humanity. A superb example of true humanity. We should send them home educated. We owe that to the world. Vietnam has served the world correctly. With the prisoners that it had, it sent them back to Algeria, and they started the armed struggle against the French. They have served the world. Thus we have to help serve the world socialist revolution. We should educate them, send them back. They got to fight over there. They got to fight because the whole world is going to be on fire, that's for sure. The whole world is going to be on fire. They got to fight over there too, so we should educate them. We should render a service to humanity, to the world socialist movement. I can't hear you. You mean the ruling circles, don't you? You mean the ruling circles? The students and the workers are doing a good job of that. And China, sure enough, they're looking at China, and Mao whooped them once before. And he was a whole lot weaker. He sure enough whooped them once before when he was a whole lot weaker. You know. The ruling circles. The ruling circles. But the contradictions are coming. Even within their system, it's coming. It's coming. China's relationship to America. Well, you have to understand that. Obviously, it seems to me that there's going to be a fight somewhere. I mean, between China and Russia, China and America, somewhere there's got to be a fight. I mean, you know, there's got to be a fight. So like America and Russia, you know, is very interesting because you can't isolate them, understand? America is in what is known as NATO. NATO. NATO is the combined military strength of all the Western imperialist countries, America, France, Britain, Germany, Italy, Spain, Greece, etc., etc. They all come together and they integrate their armies, their navies, their air forces. So they have like, you know, could you imagine what that's like, man? That's NATO. That's NATO, man. You understand that? And at any given time, man, they can control, whoo, Lord. That's frightening to think about, yeah. Well, Russia and the Eastern Socialist countries have what is known as the Warsaw Pact. Now, the Warsaw Pact is the same thing that NATO is. You have Czechoslovakia, Poland, Russia, all the Soviet socialist republics in this. So that's a jack. You know what you're talking about now. They're mighty powerful too. Now, NATO is imperialistic. Imperialistic. Warsaw Pact is socialist. They say they are. They say they are. They say they are. And these two groups, these two countries, in terms of sets of countries, who have dialectically opposed philosophies, are talking about coming together militarily. When they talk about European security, that's what they're talking about. That's all they're talking about. You hear them all the time talking about European security? That's what they're talking about. Now, it is very important for us, Africans and socialists, to understand how is it possible for a socialist system and an imperialist system to put their military might together. And if so, against what? Against what? Now, we have to examine that. They're talking about European security. Nobody's against European security. Europe should be secured. Everybody's in agreement. I'm for African security. I'm for Asian security. I'm for European security. It's a necessity. But this European security is not Europe geographically. You understand me? You understand me clearly? You hear me? It's not Europe geographically, because America ain't in Europe. You hear me? Canada ain't in Europe. You hear me? Australia ain't in Europe. You hear me? Iceland ain't in Europe. You hear me? They talking about white man security. Hear me well. Hear me well. They talking about white man security. They talking about white man security, irregardless of ideology. I'm coming. We're still talking about China. Still talking about China, brother. But we got to analyze before we go, right? China is socialist. Thus, it seems to me that China and Russia would better put their military might together against America than Russia and America put their military might together against China. It seems logical. It seems logical. And it's very Marxist. It is quite Marxist. It is orthodox Marxism. Orthodox. But America and Russia are going together, understand? Now, in NATO, they have a clause that says an attack against one is an attack against all. You hear me? You hear me? You hear me well? Now, it seems to me that if they come together, they're going to say an attack against one is an attack against all. Hear me well? And it is inevitable that contradictions between Russia and China will develop. Inevitable. Thus, an attack by China against them will be an attack against them. So Nixon, he think he's slick. He swear he's slick. He swear he's slick. He gonna send Kissinger to ask for an invitation. You hear me? He gonna ask for an invitation. Well, look here, man. If somebody asks for an invitation in your house, you can't slam the door in their face if they want to talk. You at least got to be willing to talk to them, even if you're fighting them, like the Vietnamese are doing with them. They sit and talking to them in Paris, but they whooping them in Vietnam every day. But they be talking in Paris. So the man want to talk? Oh, sure. Want to come to my house? You're welcome to. Come. Then Nixon makes it appear like if he's invited. Understand? 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 And Nixon shows up, you understand? But there's something else going on. Nixon is going to Russia after he goes to China, you understand? Hear me well. And he gives a whole lot of publicity to China and very little to Russia. Hear me well. Hear me well. In China, ain't nothing come out of it. You read what came out, what do you call, after the end of the visits when they issue these statements. They were completely opposed after the visit, completely opposed. The Chinese supported North Vietnamese, The Americans supported the South Vietnamese. The Chinese supported the North Koreans. The Americans supported the South Koreans. Everything was completely opposed. Everything. Question of Taiwan. Well, oh, yes. Well, the trip to China, of course, had to do with Taiwan. But the Chinese had won. They had won the political victory. Mao Zedong said that he wasn't going to shed another drop of Chinese blood, but he was going to unite Taiwan. He said that. Because China could have taken Taiwan anytime they wanted. They could have. But he said, we're not going to shed another drop of Chinese blood because too much has already been shed because of foreign ideologies. Dig it. Foreign, that's another word we must remember. Very descriptive, these words. Foreign ideologies. So he just united it. But they had already lost. America had lost. It had lost. Nixon leaves China, all his publicity goes to Russia. And he signs 6 agreements in Russia. 6. And just signed another one yesterday. I think by now he done signed about 11. Done signed about 11. 11. And with China, all he's doing is bringing doctors. The Chinese, right on, we're going to do that. Send some doctors too. Because what America wants to do is to give the impression that China is the one who's going to start the war. Even after they went and they tried peace. That's what they're going to try and do. That's all. That's all it's about. Ain't nothing else. He see it coming, we see it coming. My brother, you had a question? Okay, we can do that later. We can talk about the tactics later, brother. We can talk about the tactics later. Tactics. We can talk about tactics later. All right? Yes.
And how does that?
We can make them captive. Because we have the political power to make them captive in a very friendly way.
Are you saying if the system were different?
Exactly. And that's the most important thing. See, because everybody says, yeah, everybody's been getting the African, the Asians been getting, yeah, but the white man created the problem. Because now why he going to go to Asia and get Asians and bring them in and put them in this class? Why he going to do it? Because he knows inevitably there's going to be conflict. And he's going to be out. There are enough Africans there. You dig it? He pulling us out of Africa and going to Asia and bring somebody else. And you just come and fall right into his trap. Well, my brother, every time I think I come to, I've been having problems. So, me, I just leave the facts and let people come to their own assumptions. Right. But as long as the facts are there, you know, there's only one assumption to which one can come. But there's another assumption. One can come to the assumption that maybe Russia is not really socialist, or maybe America is not really capitalist. That's an alternative too. So it could be that they are both, in fact, socialist systems, or they're both, in fact, imperialist systems. But one is not genuine the other, and there's a possibility of pulling it. For example, Russia might think there's a possibility of pulling America into the NATO into the socialist camp. And NATO might think there's a possibility of pulling Russia into the imperialist camp. And so each of them may think they're genuine. Russia may think it's genuinely socialist. America will think it's genuinely capitalist. And so we just have to see.
About how geography affects people. People who come from the European, Russian, Soviet Union area, it starts culture. It's weak because of what
Socialist imperialist. That's what the Chinese call the Russians. A socialist imperialist is an imperialist who's very social with you. That's what they say.
But I mean, in terms of definition of terms, you can't be a socialist imperialist.
In that sense that the Chinese mean it, yes. The Chinese are serious. The Chinese call the Russians a lot of names. And the Chinese, when they label you, man, when they label you, they really label you. They don't play. Running dog, lackey. Man, you hear Radio Peaky, man, you go crazy. They really go into you, know. And so when they say the man's a socialist imperialist, they tell you, man, he's an imperialist who is robbing you, but doing it very socially. Huh? The Arab countries. That's another area of conflict. Very good. Very good. Excellent, my brother. Excellent. See, these folks gonna sit down to meet NATO and Warsaw. They're gonna have their European security meeting, you understand? But now, when they sit down, it's gonna be a question of power, you understand? Like NATO's gonna say, well, we control this area of the world. And Warsaw Pact gotta be able to say, well, we control the Arabs, or we control these, or, you know. It's just power play, you understand? Power play. And now there's been a lot of confusion because the Chinese have been accusing the Russians of delaying the Arabs from fighting and waging a just struggle. You understand what the Chinese are saying? The Chinese are saying that the Arabs got to fight. And once they start fighting, they're going to win. And the Chinese are saying the Russians are stopping the Arabs from fighting. And they say the way the Russians are stopping them is by confusing the Arabs. And they further say that the Russians are in cahoots with the Jews. Yes, that's what they say. That's what they say. That's what they say. And I'm not going to tell you what I think, but I'll tell you to check them out. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. That brings us then to the problem of race. Problem of race. That's a difficult problem. Difficult problem. Because it's very hard for some people to understand racism. Very hard. But there's one thing we know about it. Once you are the victim of it, racism, you know what it is. You know what it is. And sometimes this seems to have no rational basis. So irrational. So irrational. Especially when it is explained time and time again. Even when racist imperialism, the white man, racist imperialism is operating and people are pointing out the contradictions, it still continues. It still continues. It still continues. And it unleashes, man, look here. Racism, when it's unleashed, man, really, y'all got to see it, man. Y'all really all got to see it, man. Like when I was young, man, and I was in SNCC, you know, a long time ago, and we'd be jiving around with them city movement, man. You got to see it, man. Man, they'd go crazy. It's unbelievable, man. You just sit on a stool, man, and they would go crazy, insane, man. Insane. You just looking, man, they're crazy. One person can make them act this way. 5 kids can tie up a whole city. And he didn't know what we were doing to him. 5 kids can tie up a whole city. It's unbelievable, man. You can't really understand it. You know, that's on one level, man. And then you get on another level, man, with the liberals. Hey, man, and they're even colder than these cats. I mean, they're colder than these cats. And man, you try it through every class structure, every level of their society. And from top to bottom, from bottom to top, it reeks with racism. It reeks with racism. There isn't the slightest gap the slightest gap. On the question of race, there is no contradiction. For white people, on the question of race, there are no contradictions. There are contradictions on capitalism. But on race, they are a unified, monolithic structure. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. On the question of race, white society is a unified, monolithic structure. On capitalism, there are divisions. There are real divisions, even if they don't see it. But on race, hey man, it's hard. Really, only divisions are the ethnic divisions, like the Greeks against the Italians or something like that. But on the question of whites, unified. 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 Some people say that capitalism gave birth to racism. Some people say racism gave birth to capitalism. I was saying 2 days ago, innate racism. But some people have corrected me, and they are right. I'm incorrect. It's not innate racism. We can't say that Whitey has innate racism, because we have to allow for change. Because the one thing we know about life is that change is permanent. We have to allow for change. It's possible. It's possible. There's possible change, brother. We know that. All change is possible. All change is possible. All change. All change. It's possible. We have to allow for it. Understand? But while we're allowing for it, we got to prepare in case it don't. You understand? We're allowing for it. We're going to allow for it. Understand? But we're going to prepare for it in case it don't change. You understand? Because we'd be fooled if we don't. And we have to prepare for it because historically, nobody can deny that we must prepare for it. We must prepare for it because everywhere the white man, European culture, has come in contact with African culture, there has been constant and unceasing conflict. Constant and unceasing conflict whenever European culture meets African culture. In Africa, when he came, conflict, constant, unceasing. On the ships while he was bringing us here, constant, unceasing. In the West Indies, rebellions, constant, unceasing. In Brazil, constant, unceasing. In Harlem, constant, unceasing. In South Carolina, constant, unceasing. Unceasing conflict. Constant and unceasing conflict. Every time. Yes, my brother. That's tactical. That's tactical. I'd rather stick with principles. Because if you stick with principles, you can debate on tactics. I think many people always get, trouble is today, we're all trying to get caught up in tactics rather than principles. So then let's do principles, then we can deal with tactics later. My sister. What role does religion play in a true revolutionary movement? A true revolutionary movement is scientific. Religion is unscientific. It's true. Can you disagree with me? Is religion scientific? It's unscientific. It's what the French call mystification.
Some of the tactics.
But it is here. It is here. It is a reality. So we must get the positive. It's like Superfly. It's here. So we got to deal with it. We're not strong enough to put it out. So we take the positive.
What I was about to say on that point is, in any revolution, there's need for collective thinking reorientation.
Of course.
And building of emotions within the science of it.
But the science will do that. The science will do that. The science will do that.
Could we take some of the techniques?
Oh, yes. Oh, no, no, no. No, listen. It is a fact that in a true revolutionary movement, religion is unscientific. We understand that. But we have a lot of people who are thoroughly imbued with religion. And for us to come before them and say to them, hey, man, you know, that's nonsense, it just causes conflict amongst us. And at this point, we want to minimize our conflict. So we take the positive from the religion and walk right through the church with it. SNCC organized from church, you know. SNCC organized from church. Well, you should see some preachers from SNCC. I mean, young boys. I'll preach to ministers and take his whole audience from him. What you mean? Get up there and say, yes, sir. Yes, sir, I read the Bible. Yes, sir, I know it. Glad to be here. Well, the joyful noise they said unto me when they said, let us go into the house of the Lord. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I'm glad to be here. Yes, sir, I'm from New York, but I go to church every Sunday. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I thank my mother and father for sending me to church. Yes, because they taught me something. They taught me the Bible, and the Bible says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's right. That's right. Thou shalt bow down before no other man before me. That's what the Bible says. And if you bow down before the white man, you're unchristian. Yes, sir. Right. Yes. Yeah, I know the Bible. I know the Bible. I know the Bible well. Jesus said, I've come to bring the sword, not the shield. That's what he said. Jesus said, it's in your Bible. Yes. And that's all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. I'm doing the Lord's work. Yeah. We can take the positive and move with it because we know we're not going to need it. Let's just take the positive. They're negatives. The negatives is they sit in the church. They become fatalistic. The negative outweighs the positive, but we must collect the positive. Leave the negative. Well, let's get Islam first, since we're with religion. It's non-scientific. Anything is non-scientific, me personally, I got no use for it. On what? On Islam? I can say it's non-scientific very easily. Its origins is non-scientific. The Prophet said that he saw Allah, and this is what Allah told the Prophet. Dig it? Now me, I didn't see Allah. So I don't know what Allah told the Prophet. And I want to know why Allah picked the Prophet. You understand? To write all these things down. And the Prophet, he got so much zeal when Allah, who is just, told him this, that he went out and killed everybody else who didn't accept what Allah told him. You understand? And he even left Saudi Arabia and came into my country. You understand that? Came into my country and did that, man. Understand? It's unscientific.
Have you studied
Yes, my brother. I have observed it in action. I have not observed its theory, but its practice, I know. It is very fatalistic. Well, now, the Muslims, Orthodox Muslims? Hmm?
I'm talking about both. Well, Orthodox, that's white people.
All right. Well, I've studied very carefully Orthodox Muslim in Guinea. But I haven't studied very, I haven't very carefully studied the Nation of Islam. I have not very carefully studied it. It's doing some good things in the community. And the positive aspects seem to outweigh the negative aspects. And we must always be careful that that continues. Because we know in everything there's positive and negative. But the negative will always be insignificant. Oh, Limpiao, right, I'm sorry. Okay. On Limpiao and Mao, hey, listen, y'all. See, me, this blew my mind. You hear me? You hear me? I mean, I'm young. I ain't been around. I ain't been nowhere, really, you know. But I see dudes, man, we played marbles together, man, stabbed me in the back, you understand? It don't bother me, I keep getting up. But I figured there comes a time, you know, if you live long enough, that stuff stops. I was in Guinea. I saw what people who work with Sekou Touré for 25 years, man. For 25 years, man. They were sitting with the cat eating dinner and plotting against him. You know what I'm talking about? Taking money from the white man to kill him for 25 years, man. You hear me? I said, wow, that's pretty deep, man. I said, well, after a while, maybe we clean it up. And then I heard on the radio about Limpiao, man. And it was the Russians who released it, you understand? I said, oh, man, they jiving. They're just trying to cause divisions. And America picked it up. I said, oh, I know these white people, man. They're just trying to cause divisions. And the Chinese admitted it, man. I said, wow, hey, man, how, you know? Well, there are always contradictions. Hard to say, brother, because information that I received, the Chinese said that the man tried to commit assassination against Chairman Mao Zedong. And he didn't make it, but he took a plane with his whole family and, you know, people, and was flying, and the plane blew up over Mongolia. And he died there. And the Russians said that they went to Mongolia, and they dug up all the bodies, and they didn't find Limpiao. And they said, as a matter of fact, everybody on the plane was under 33. You know, so that's where it's hanging, you know. So you just have to try and figure out what's happening.
Do you see any, looking back historically, do you see any emanations of that conflict? Do you see how that could be bearing on certain groups, maybe on
Well, it could have been a development from the Cultural Revolution. Could have been a development from the Cultural Revolution. But the Chinese did say that Limpiao was heading to Russia when his plane crashed. I forgot to mention that. So, at least they were letting us know that, hey, man, it's still on. In case you all forgot, it's still on. He was on his way to Russia. So whether he was or he wasn't, they said it, and they must have said it for a reason. If he wasn't, if he was, if he wasn't. So they just want you to know it's still on. All right. That's also part of the philosophy. Now, the other thing we got to understand very carefully. Africa, she's one. She's one. And she belongs to Africans. She belongs to us. She's our mother. You understand? Now, she's rich. She's nice. A lot of people try to get her. A lot of people try to get her. They try. They try. They can dominate, but they can never conquer. They can, says Sekou Touré, dominate, but never conquer. They can never conquer Africa. It's not possible. But they try. They try. And the Arabs, under the guise of Islam, did it. They came. But we, man, look here, we're just people. You know what I'm saying? We're very just. And we said to them, y'all here, man, but you know, if y'all want to be Africans, y'all can be. We say that. That's actually what we say. We actually say that, man. If y'all want to be Africans, y'all can be. You know, 'cause we know what y'all did, but that's all in the past, you know. We can't forget it, but we can sure forgive you. I mean, you know, we can forgive, we can't forget. We say you can stay, you know. So now if they do that, they'll stay, you know. But really, ain't no problem. Ain't no problem. Because you see, they got some people over here called Jews, man. And they're going to be fighting all the Arabs. They're going to be fighting them all. And they're going to be fighting for Egypt, which is in Africa. So the Arabs, they will be protecting the northern tip of our continent. Oh, well, it's all the same. I mean, you can document it. Everybody knows it's the same. I don't have all the facts in my hand, but I read pamphlets all the time. Anybody can get one. It's the same. It's the same. It's the same because the Zionist control of South Africa is total. 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 No, there's scientific socialism. It's practiced in Africa. Well, because if you put down the principles of socialism, you'll find the principles are the same. Because they're universal and abiding. Marx and Engels did not discover socialism. They didn't discover it. They merely observed and recorded. That's all. That's all. It's like Newton. He says if a body's in motion, he tends to stay in motion unless stopped by an outside force. Newton didn't invent that. He just observed it and recorded it. Right? And what he observed and recorded was a universal truth. Now, because the Europeans have been writing for a long time, it appears that he calls it Newton's law. Right. Same thing with Marx and Engels. It's called Marxism and Leninism, but it's universal. They observed it, and they recorded it, and scientifically compiled it. We thank them for that, and that only. That and that only. But Osagifo says, in his philosophical classical work, Conscientism, if one seeks the roots of Marxism, Leninism, one must go to communalism. The roots are to be found in the African traditional society. Anybody got a copy of Conscientism? No. Osagifo says that if one seeks the political ancestors or roots, I think it's roots. Roots or ancestors, I'm not sure. Ancestors, the political ancestors of Marxism, Leninism, one must go to communalism. Which means that communalism is the ancestor of socialism. Thus, communalism in Africa, socialism in Africa, which develops from communalism in Africa, is airtight socialism. But it's still scientific. It's universal and abiding. But it's socialism in Africa with its own peculiarities. Well, I'm not sure, because he says if you want the ancestors of it, you got to go to communalism. So he sends you to communalism. But he says it's scientific. If it is scientific, is it not universal truth? If it is scientific, is it not universal truth? Yes.
I have no problem with, for example, I've heard a lot of economists say there's no African socialism, and that's why I brought that question.
Yes.
Well, I'm just not actually saying that. If it is scientific, but like, when you get down to specific concepts like matter and, the African concept of matter is not just matter. We have the concept of matter that is not an emotion. We have the concept that is matter and spirit. Now, what is, that kind of thing. So it's just that kind of terminology that I'm against. And when describing African socialism, they get into too much Marx-Leninism terminology. And that distorts the whole thing. It looks now that African should go and study Marx-Leninism, that kind of thing.
No. You can study, have you ever seen a book entitled The Mind of Africa?
Yeah.
And Conscientism? Well, I think that if you looked at those two, you'd see clearly.
Just one point that Engels' observations were not of African society. He observed Morgan, who observed the Iroquois in New York State, what became used. So that Diop's cultural unity just totally dismissed Engels and Fourier and all the people that Engels based his philosophy. So even in
But
in the sense that it's these Marxists, the first Marxists, they didn't even point to the heaviest contradiction in the world at that time, which was the colonization of Africa and the slavery of black people. They mentioned it.
there's no disagreement with that. There's no disagreement with that. But the universality of their concepts, that the means of production must be owned and controlled by the masses, is that universal and abiding?
But why even Lenin? Because I can see in terms of practicality of Lenin, of course, Marx, Engels, Lenin, and the rest in the streets is difficult because we already have a tendency to go towards white philosophies.
That's why I said nkrumahism. That's why I said nkrumahism. That's why I said nkrumahism, because his is universal too. That's why I said it. I'm here. I can't hear you, I'm so sorry. Well, they're just confused. They're trying to be internationalists before they're nationalists, but you can't be an internationalist before you have a nation, obviously. And your contribution to world socialism, as a matter of fact, is much better if you secure socialism in your nation. But you're also supposed at the same time to carry on the struggle for international socialism. And the Vietnamese demonstrate that. Because while they fight the white boy, they send doctors to Guinea. You hear what I'm talking about? The Vietnamese have doctors in Guinea. And they fight a war in Vietnam. Here's my sister. Is it straight enough?
Yeah.
I'm glad. The basic of the problem, the conflict in terms of capitalism and imperialism is economic. That's the problem. The solution is economic. Now understand me well. The prerequisite is political. The prerequisite to the solution is political. That is to say, that before you can solve any problems your people face, you must start politically. You must start politically. You can't start economically. Now, a lot of people try and do that. They tell you we should be black businessmen. What we need, man, is look here, man, we gotta have some money before we can do anything. No, brother. It's not money who creates man. It's man who creates money. Let me get the people. We'll make our money. We'll make our money. I hear you. But when you get your men politically, what are you doing? Well, after you have a thorough understanding of it, you got to study it. I do it all the time. I do it all the time. Like pulling positives from negatives, I do those things all the time. All the time. Because theory without practice is empty. 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 There's no discussion on this economics. Everybody agrees that you must first have political movement. You must understand now what you're agreeing with. You must understand what you're agreeing with. You're saying that anybody who comes to us pushing a program of economic development or economic this or money this before pushing a program of political education is going the wrong way. That's what you're saying. Are you sure you agree with that? Well, what you're also saying is that once we start getting together, there ain't going to be a lot of money. And we should not expect a lot of money. As a matter of fact, it's going to get worse. As a matter of fact, it's going to get worse. And what you're saying is that you're willing to put off economic satisfaction to meet your economic desires for the good of the political entity. That's what you're saying. Yeah. It's a framework of any society, any people who seek their liberation.
The reason I ask that because I'm familiar with the concept of production, man being able to make his own society.
Yes.
Am I in the same? Am I in the right camp when I look at this?
Yes.
How so?
Because you're going out to meet your needs. You need a house. You need food. You need clothes, all right? And in this society, you need money, right? All right. So that's what you need. Now the question is, how's the best way to get it? How's the best way to get it? Not the fastest, but the best. Not the fastest, the best. Because the fastest ain't always the best. Now the fastest can look pretty. Mighty pretty. Mighty pretty. There's a difference between a war horse and a race horse. There's a big difference. A race horse, pretty. I mean pretty, just galloping away, boy. Passing everybody, and look here. The people just be looking, finish. They go wild, you know. Then they wait, man, but it's just a fast race, you understand? After that race, it ain't no more. So people always say, hey, remember? Yeah, he ran a fast race, man. He was only here for about 10 minutes, you know. It was fast, you know what I'm saying? A war horse keeps going. It's a handsome horse. It's an understood horse. Understands life. Confidently, it walks through. Constantly. And the only time he stops is when he's finished. He don't finish before he stops. A racehorse finishes before he stops. But the war horse only finishes when he stops. When he stops, it's finished for him. You understand? So, we don't want people rushing. We don't want them rushing. We don't want them galloping fast. We want them slow down, understanding that the war horse, while he may take longer to get there, is the horse. Is the horse. We don't want him to rush. We don't want him to rush. We want to get the best way. And the best way is by your entire people coming together and deciding how many houses do we need? How many can we build this year? How can we expand later on? Rather than for you saying, I'm going to go out here and try and get me a house. Because there are only X number of houses anyway. And you will be in competition with everybody else. You may build a fast house. Make no mistake about it. You may build a pretty house. But you'll be finished before you stop. So before you get to this, you have to sit down and train yourself to understand this, that when we get to this, there will be no exploitation. There will be no opportunity for classes to arise so that our children will be fighting each other. Because after all, Osagyefo says on the fly page of Conscientism, he quotes a letter from Engels, which is Engels writing to some dude, and Engels said, you know, man, there's a whole lot of confusion around Marxism, Leninism, or Marxism. A lot of people feel that that Marxism is just about economics, only economics. But that's not it. That's not the most important thing in life. He said everybody knows the most important thing in life is recreation. And he's correct. The most important thing in life is recreation. How we recreate. If we weren't going to recreate any more children, there's no need for us to be here. We just go on and play it until it's over. So it's what comes after that's important. And if we're intelligent people, we cannot build a system that will lead to inevitable conflict. We can't do that. So that we have to slow this down. Man can't have $1 million house. Just can't have it. Sorry. Ceiling is 10,000. You can work, you own 10,000 without exploiting your people. Every penny belongs to you. Every penny. See, a lot of people misunderstand socialism. You know? And the white boy knows that. One time, you know, when I was living in D.C., the white boy said I owned a $70,000 house. It was very funny, man. I didn't own no house. You understand? But I know where Whitey was coming from. And I used to watch the reaction of the brothers, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, they're out there. You own a $70,000 house, man. Hey, brother, did you ever give me a penny? Did you ever give me a penny? Did you ever see me exploit black people? It's like if I own a $70,000 house, as long as I've worked for it honestly, without exploiting anybody, it belongs to me. Isn't that just? That's what socialism is all about. If you work for it without exploiting anybody, honestly, it's yours. Yes. If we have 50 acres of land, I work 20. You work 50. You're going to get a bigger harvest. I can't under socialism come and say, hey, man, you're supposed to give me. Whoa, brother. If I work 50, you work 50. If I work 50, you work 50. Then we can share. I can't work no 50 and you work no 20. Right on. And if you can't work 50, work to the fullest of your capacity. And if the fullest of your capacity is 30, I give you my 20. But work to the fullest of your capacity. If you do that, we can work. We can do it. Just work to the fullest of your capacity. Ain't gonna be no problem. Don't think so. No conflict. The old man says, Osagyefo says that there are class structures. There are class structures in Africa, right? But it says 97% of the people are peasants. Those of you who are always talking about going to Africa, you got to think what that means. Understand what it means? 97% of the people are peasants. That means ain't many cities. And when they say peasants, they mean peasants. Mud hut peasants, 97%. But if you love it, you know what it's going to do, you're going to work with it. So that means about 3% out there. Now, these 3%, they are no hard, fast capitalists. You understand? Most of these are government workers, ministers, cabinet ministers, you know, big clerks. They're the ones who make up this 3%. Then you have the politicians. Then you have people who are agents for European industrial firms. They also come, understand, under this bracket. Now, what Nkrumah says is that these people who form this class structure is in fact imitating the mannerisms of a race, rather than of a class. And he says that because he says, these Africans imitate the white boy who they come in contact with on the continent. Understand? But the white boy who came to the continent as a governor general or as a sergeant with the army is from the lower class of Europe. Understand? And so when this white boy comes, he has certain mannerisms. And the brother adopts this mannerism. And he thinks he's adopting the mannerism of a class that's above him. So he says it's only a race. And Sekou Touré says there's no class structure in Africa. In that sense, there's only revolutionary and counter-revolutionary. Those who are truly African, and he repeats all the time, those who keep true to African dignity and African culture, and those who do not. Same division, is it not? Same division. Everybody agrees on politics, because this is very important. Very important, because there are a lot of people in our community who are talking about economic development. And you have to understand very carefully, if you say that that's not the way, then you have to understand you're talking about political way. But, my brother.
How would you define politics?
All interactions of people on a social level. The interrelationships of those reactions. Because culture is anything man-made. Culture is anything man-made. Politics is the interrelationships and those principles which govern the interrelationships of human beings on all levels. See, but you have to get politics before you get economics. Because no country had economic independence before it had political independence. No country. You can't name me one country that said we have economic independence. All of them must go through political independence. You can't nationalize a bank if you don't have no political power. Here's my brother.
How can you say that the Islam that Brother Malcolm had was not scientific?
I can say the Islam Brother Malcolm had was not scientific.
How can you say that?
Because he himself said so. He said that when you come to talk about religion, let's put that in the corner. That ain't got nothing to do with the scientific problem we're dealing with. Whether you're Baptist, Methodist, or whatever, he still gets you because of something else. Let's deal with this other thing else. Put that one in the closet. He was telling you it's not scientific, man. That's all he was saying. It ain't got nothing to do with what we're talking about here. This is science. If you got that contradiction, keep that contradiction in the closet. But let's work with this science.